We provide regulatory compliance software to mid-sized and large organizations here in the US and 5 other countries. I'm also on the board of TIE Houston, which is hosting this webinar. I would like to thank our charter members and our sponsors for hosting this event. A little bit of information about TIE. The Indus Entrepreneurs was founded in 1992 in Silicon Valley by a group of successful entrepreneurs, corporate executives, and senior professionals. There are currently 15,000 members, including over 3,000 charter members or mentors in 61 chapters across 14 countries. TIE's mission is to foster entrepreneurship globally through mentoring, networking, investing, and education. The pandemic has changed the way we do business and how our customers do business with us. So today I'm excited to introduce Clay Spitz, Managing Director of Chief Outsiders. Clay is a sales and marketing executive who thinks like an owner, and for good reason. He has considerable experience as a business owner as well as a marketing executive, working on a broad scale ranging from small to mid-size privately held companies to Fortune 1000 corporations. Clay became president of a family pest control business that was sold to Waste Management, Inc. He became part of the management team that acquired over 200 pest control and lawn care companies and is as part of the national roll-up that became the 3rd largest pest control and lawn care firm in the nation. The roll-up was sold to Terminix, the largest company in the industry, where he became vice president of marketing. Clay has also held that title at Telecheck, the nation's largest check guarantee company, and Ocean Foundation Repair, a well-known regional company providing construction and repair services all throughout the Southeast US and Texas. Clay joined Chief Outsiders in 2020, one of the early members and now managing partner of what has grown to become a national management consulting firm, from providing chief marketing officers on a fractional or part-time basis to mid-sized companies that wish to accelerate their growth. The firm has over 70 CMOs across the country from every business segment. So I'm going to hand it over to Clay to get started with the workshop. Please feel free to use the chat window if you have any questions during this, and we'll either answer it during the workshop or after, where we have about 15 minutes scheduled for questions from the attendees. So Clay, I'll hand this over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Aju. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. I see a couple of names in the participant list that I know. And to those of you who I don't, I really appreciate your joining. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today, and I hope you find the content today relevant. I am going to share my screen. There we go. Hopefully everybody can see that. And what we're talking about today is recovery. Recovery in the face of COVID, in the face of a very tough economy that we've been in, and the challenges of that recovery, because this is not a traditional recovery. This is not a traditional time in our history, in our economy, and surviving and thriving is going to take some changes and some different kind of thinking that it might have taken before to grow and to be successful. And so there we go. One of the things I want to tell you is that those of you who have registered through the link that you were sent will receive from TIE a copy of a workbook that I'll be referring to during my presentation. And if for any reason you don't get a copy of that workbook, you can either communicate directly with Samia at TIE, or you'll get my email address during this presentation. You're welcome to write me, And in addition to some other things that I'll offer you, I'll be happy to send you a copy of the workbook and the slides for your reference. Okay, having to use my mouse to make changes. Okay, here we go. So first of all, I really love this quote by John Maxwell. I think it's so relevant here. The pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects it to change, and the leader adjusts the sails. And I think you'll see that we are in a period of almost constantly having to adjust the sails. We're in a very uncertain period. Even now with, and as you and I were talking about this before the webinar started, we thought things were kind of recovering smoothly, and now things are starting to falter a little bit. Your guess may be as good as mine as to why, but I think the new variants in COVID that we're starting to see are starting to make some people uncomfortable with what the future might look like and maybe less certain. And so we're constantly having to adjust the sails. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to adjust the sails as we go forward. And the first thing I'd like to start with are some insights that I'd like to share, some of the latest information that we have on the economy, on business attitudes toward recovery and expectations. What we have today may change next month, we'll see. But this is the latest information we have today. And I'd like to start with just a representation of what I call the Corona curve. And we've been through a lot of this already, but every business may be in a different part of this cycle. And months ago, almost a year ago, we had the trigger event and the tipping point and a realization that we really had something major going on. And a lot of businesses, including our own, saw the pause, revenue drop, most of us, probably 3/4 of the economy, 3/4 of businesses saw revenue drop. And we had to figure out what survival looked like in March, April, May of 2020. And then some people are still not seeing signs of life. If you're in the restaurant business or the hospitality business, you could still be in a very tough spot. A lot of other businesses started to see recovery and to rebuild. There were lots of pivots. Lots of companies took a different approach, changed their products and services to meet the demands of the market, rebuilt markets. I know in our business at Chief Outsiders, where we're serving mostly middle market businesses, we've had a tremendous recovery and we've had record months. And other businesses are seeing the same. In fact, some businesses did better during COVID than they were doing before, but most people are still in a recovery mode. This is McKinsey. Certainly you're familiar with McKinsey. They've been doing a lot of surveys recently during the last year. And this is a fairly recent one, even showing information and results from November through December of people's outlooks. They primarily are surveying big companies, but people are expecting the global economy in the next 6 months to be better. So that's a good sign. These are business leaders' expectations. We follow a company called ITR Economics. They're an economic forecasting firm out of the Northeast. We've been following them for years. And this comes from their monthly trends report. I would recommend you take a look at itreconomics.com. They have some free information, some free monthly newsletters you can get. And their trends report is somewhere around $1,000 a year to get a monthly update. Red, yellow, green are kind of obvious colors. You can see what the phases of the economy are that they're projecting, but we're still currently in a recession. They are expecting recovery in almost every sector. In other words, accelerating growth during 21, slowing growth in 22, that's the yellow, not negative, so not a recession, just a little bit slower growth pattern in 22, and 2023, another year of accelerating growth. So, very optimistic, very positive, but these guys are all about the numbers. There is no emotion here. It is based on formulas and projections, and they have a very good record of being right over a long period of time in their projections. So I'm very optimistic about that. Verbally, here's what they've said in their report: 2021, a year of recovery, persistent upward momentum. 2022, some slowing of growth, but every core market reaching a business cycle low in 2023, but no contraction at the bottom of the cycle. So slowing growth, and every segment ending 2023 in accelerating growth. I think that's reason for us to be optimistic. The National Center for the Middle Market, which is also a great source of information about middle market companies. What this says is these are the percentage of executives expecting a major negative long-term impact in their business. And so in almost every one, well, in all of these categories, the expectation of negative impact has declined to about 10%. So 90% of the respondents in the middle market surveys that they do every quarter are expecting actually not long-term negative impact in the business. So, at least a neutral to a positive impact in the business. So again, a reason for optimism. However, I would tell you that doesn't mean things will go back to quote normal. And, we might think of normal as what things were before the pandemic. What the quote new normal looks like, my crystal ball, quite frankly, is very cloudy. And I think we have a lot to learn and a lot to discover and things to develop over the new normal. And that's where I think, we have to continually trim the sails. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about the difference between running a company and growing a company. We're going to talk about a 12-step checklist for building a recovery plan. Talk about aligning sales and marketing, and something that everybody seems to be very interested in, which is digital assessments and how do you improve your digital marketing. And we'll talk about why that's so important. Before we get there, let me share with you what I'm seeing from businesses. And we've worked with over 1,000 businesses in the life of our company, which is about 11 years. We have 140 or 150 clients using our service on any particular month. And so, and I probably talk to 100 CEOs in a month. So what am I hearing? What I'm hearing, number one, is the old ways of developing business are not working today. Many businesses in B2B sectors use trade shows, in-person relationship building, other ways of direct selling that are, at least today, not relevant. Hopefully they will be in the future, and we'll have in-person events again and make in-person sales calls. But I think that's part of what is the unknown about the new normal. What I do see a lot is that people are experiencing that their buyers have, quote, gone digital, and they weren't prepared for the rapid pace at which things have moved to a digital method of research and buying. Although things were already heading that direction, I think 3 to 5 years of digital adoption has been forced into the last year. Some buyers' needs have changed, whether it's products that have changed or timelines, pricing, or ways of buying. A lot of companies' teams are not aligned on what they should do in order to recover. And most frequently, I'm hearing people say, we don't really have a strategy for recovery and growth. We're doing things, we're doing random things, but we're not sure what our strategy should be to grow. And so we're going to talk a bit about what that means. And the question really here is, are you going to survive, or are you going to thrive in the new economy, in the recovery, in the new situation, whatever that turns out to be? I'd submit to you, and in our experience, what we have found is that running a company and growing a company are different and take very different skills. And many CEOs are very good, they're very operationally focused and very good at running their company. But running a company requires a focus inside the four walls of the business. How do I optimize on my people, on my processes, on my financial situation? How do I make things better by being better at running my business? Where growing a company really requires that you align to the outside, align to your competitors and what are they doing and how do I beat them at the game, aligning to your customers, and aligning to the realities and the needs of the market, which are all outside the day-to-day realm of the business. And if you're focused on making things better inside, that's great. But somebody in the organization has to be focused on bringing an outside view into the company in order to be able to effectively grow. There are lots of definitions of marketing, but I have one that I believe you'll find interesting. And marketing is my expertise and my company's expertise. So that's where I'm going to focus today on thinking about strategy and execution. And try this on for size. And you'll understand the graphic, the photo in a minute. Marketing is bending your company and its products and services toward the mind of the customer. So think about that for just a second. Marketing is bending the company and its products or services toward the mind of the customer. Where sales, many people don't understand the difference between sales and marketing, but sales is bending the mind of the customer toward your company and its products or services. These functions are symbiotic. One does not work well without the other. One is not a substitute for the other, but they're different sides of the same coin. And so as we go forward, I'd like you to keep that in mind. We'll go back and talk about what is marketing in most mid-sized companies. Well, we think of it as often random acts of marketing. People are doing all kinds of things, all kinds of execution, and all of these things are meant to develop leads, and leads are meant to result in a sale. But if they're random, some may work, but often they don't work well. And so again, part of the view of what marketing really is part of a process. We call this process the growth gears. Good insights help you develop good strategy, which leads to much better execution, efficient and effective execution, which then can lead to much more effective sales. So all of these things that I referred to as typical things that people think of as marketing, I would call little m marketing. They're the execution pieces where big M marketing, the strategic part, starts with insights and leads to strategy that then leads to better execution. Here's another issue that is really critical that most people miss is that, and if you're not familiar with the term the buyer's journey, it is what you think it is. It's how a buyer goes from recognizing a need to solving that need through buying the product or service that will solve that need. And this has been developing over a number of years, but the buyer's journey's changed. And depending on the industry, depending on the product or the service being offered, between 50 and 80% of the buyer's journey today takes place online. That means that if you're waiting for somebody to call you to inquire about your product or service, but you're not leading them there with the right digital strategy, you may be left out altogether because a competitor may be better at capturing that buyer digitally at the time that they start their search, and you may completely miss your opportunity. So think about this. If you're old enough to have bought a car prior to the last 10 years and went to a car dealership, does this guy look familiar to you? That slick car salesman who was waiting, hanging his arm on the post outside the car dealership to capture you as you got out of your vehicle to go in and start to look. And that guy had all of the information about what he had to offer, and you as the buyer had very little. But what's changed? Well, Google has changed everything. And where do you start when you're buying a car today? First thing you do is go online and start to research and find out what your options are and find out what a car should cost and look at cars inside your budget and get your options. And when you go to the car dealership today, you are often more informed than the salesperson. You've got lots of power because you've got lots of information. This is not just in buying products for consumers. This has very much penetrated the B2B buying cycle, where your buyers of your products and services are very educated before you ever get a chance to interact with them. And so if you're not part of that education process, you're behind the curve. Another McKinsey study. This is comparing 2016 to 2019, and we'll get to 2020 in a minute. But you can see that B2B buyers have had a growing preference for self-service over the last several years, where in 2019, they have a great preference for researching online, much more than they did in 2016, and all through the buying cycle, evaluation, ordering, and reordering. But now let's look at COVID, that even in 2020, B2B sellers realize that their buyer has double the preference in 2020, even than they did in 2019, for digital methods of doing research and making buying decisions. What that tells me is that right now, if you're not 2 times better than you were in 2019 at your digital marketing, you're behind the curve and you're missing opportunities. And so we're going to talk about how you start to repair that. But it is a factor, and still part of the buyer's journey here. Not only technology, but COVID has changed sales and marketing. And if you think about what was previous, where marketing was responsible for generating awareness and interest and maybe part of the consideration, where sales took over in the middle of the cycle and was responsible from consideration all the way through purchase. Marketing is responsible for a much bigger part of that sales and marketing funnel, all the way down into evaluation, where a salesperson, whether it's the owner of the company or an outside sales rep or somebody taking a call at the company, now only gets involved in the sales cycle much later. And again, if your marketing is not finding prospects and nurturing prospects through the cycle, they never end up talking to somebody inside and making a purchase decision in your favor. So it's really critical. As we talk through that growth gears model, this is the checklist I talked about. The first 4 parts of the recovery checklist are critical insights. You need to know, how has your customer, their needs and their buying habits changed in the last year for you to be relevant to them? How have your competitors changed? Your competitors are responding, and if your competitors are responding better than you are, you're getting behind the curve. And what's changed in terms of how you can address the market? What is your company good at? maybe that is even more relevant to the market than it was before? Or what do you need to be better at? What have you learned that can give you a competitive advantage? And finally, how have the economic forecasts changed? So, aligning to the outside market, and how has that changed the needs, the buying cycles, even the size of purchase of your customers? So gaining those insights is really important. How do you do that? Well, here are all kinds of things that you can do. We'll talk about an activated SWOT. Everybody's got strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threat exercise, probably in your bottom drawer now toward the back of the drawer. You haven't pulled it out in a couple of years. When you did it before, it had some very generic things on it, like our greatest strength is our people. I see that in every SWOT. Our strength is our people. And I don't know what the weaknesses are, but opportunities and threats are often mischaracterized because those are external. And so it may be time to pull that out and rethink what your SWOT is, but not only that, to really think through and activate it. To think through your customer segmentation. Who are your best customers and why? And who are the customers on the fringes that you're not really that good at serving? They're not a relevant customer. Stop wasting energy. Focus in on who your best customers are. Do quick reviews, careful reviews of why you're winning and why you're losing. Look at your website on usertesting.com and find out how your website fares with users, and look at websitegrader.com and how is your website faring versus your competition. You can look at your competitor's website in these as well and get competitive information. There are all kinds of other things, digital assessments, competitive analysis, and the secondary research, and most especially talking to your customers and understanding where your customers are and how their needs have changed. So that SWOT we talked about, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, these need to be carefully thought out and how they've changed for your company. Some companies will even do a competitive SWOT. They'll do this exercise as if they were in their competitor's shoes to try to better understand the competition that they're up against. But none of this is relevant if you can't turn this into action. And so one exercise to do is to take your top 3 or 4 in each of these categories and say, okay, what can I do as a result? How do I leverage my strengths? How do I either improve on or make my weaknesses of less consequence? What can I do with the opportunities in the market? How do I protect against the threats and actually turn this into action? There's only so much you can do. So only pick 2, 3, maybe 4 at the most in each category, but do something with this. This is not an exercise to go through and say, this is great, let's put it in the drawer till next year. I would submit to you that strategy without insights is really just a dream. And so you need those good insights to develop your strategy. And where are the areas that you should think about being strategic? One is the markets and the segments that you're serving. Are there others that you can serve just as well that might be more relevant during the pandemic and in the recovery? Are you serving the right segments in the right way? Are there differences in your segments and how you serve them, different kinds of customers, and do you need to be addressing them differently? Look at what you offer the market in a fresh way. Do you have capabilities that you can use to offer new products or services to the market that they need during this time? Or are there different ways you can position your offerings in a way that might be more relevant? Can you adjust pricing? Can you adjust your features and how you bundle sets of products or services or unbundle them to make them more relevant to the market? I know we're finding a lot of clients that we serve are more interested in doing a workshop right now or doing something small to get started than buying into the idea of a fractional chief marketing officer engagement, because they're more risk averse. They're not sure what's going to be happening in the next few months. So let's do something smaller now that's going to help us prepare for the next few months. How is that relevant in your business, and what can you think about that you can do differently for your clients and customers? It's going to be more relevant to them. How does your positioning need to change? How's your messaging need to change? Again, to be relevant to the current times, to your clients. And these are all things that we're going to talk about, actually some exercises coming up that you can use. And the workbook that I mentioned to you helps you facilitate that. And our book that we wrote called The Growth Gears that documents this approach, I'm going to offer to everyone who's listening to this webinar at no charge. And I'll tell you how you get a copy of the book. So the strategy tools, we've talked about some of these: market segmentation, customer segmentation, understanding your buyer better, really developing a persona of who is your buyer, how do they buy, why do they buy, what are their buying criteria, understand them better, think about how your product portfolio or your service portfolio works for them, and reorienting your positioning and your messaging. So here's an exercise for you, and I believe it starts on page 2 of the workbook when you get the workbook. Thinking about, where does your growth come from? And if you think about it in a 4-quadrant chart, you can recover and gain share with current products, current customers. You can provide new offerings to your current customers. You can enter new markets. The hardest of all is bringing new products and services to new markets. And each of those areas has a risk. And we'll talk about just a couple of cases of pivoting that some companies have done as an example of bringing something new to the market or a new way to serve existing customers. A hearing aid company, back several months ago when everything was shut down and you couldn't go into an office, a hearing aid store was a non-essential service back months ago. So what did this company do with 1,600 store outlets around the company, all around the country, all of them closed? They figured out how to offer a hearing test online, how to help people fit their hearing aids online, and they got a tremendous acceptance rate. They brought in new revenue, and now they have differentiation during the recovery that a lot of their competitors don't. A lot of companies in segments are serving industry. Industrial engineering firm that had to be on site, working on site with their clients. They added a way to virtually design, use video conferencing to design solutions, to do everything virtual. And they left some of their competition in the dust who hadn't been able to do that. And they recovered much more quickly and even now have higher margins. Just a couple of examples of things that some companies have done. Here's how to think about this, and I'm going to give you a consumer example. If anybody's a wine drinker that's on this call, you might relate. But these examples I'm going to give you translate into B2B businesses. If you make wine glasses, one thing you can do if you want to grow your business is if you sell them at retail to consumers, now think about, how do I sell my wine glasses? This is not necessarily the best example today, into more institutional settings in hotels or restaurants or whatever. But the other thing you could do is you could offer wine accessories to your customers, new products and services to your current clients. Or you could say, I'm not just in the wine glass business, I'm in the glass making business. I could make I could turn my production lines into things for medical glass. So offer new products and services to a new market. But each of these has a different risk. And it's not trivial to enter a new market. It's not trivial to develop new products, and definitely not trivial to enter new products and new markets at the same time. So part of the insight phase that you have to go through is understanding what you have to do in each of these markets to be relevant. So I know I'm moving very quickly here. You can do this exercise for yourself, especially with the guidance of the Growth Gears book. We'll move on to, once you have your products and services, how do you message them? You have to be clear, you have to be relevant, and you have to be different. This is an exercise that we called the brand house, understanding why you matter. What you do is very simple. Everybody can describe what they do, but can you describe why it's relevant to your customers? Why your customers care? And this is the hardest part for people. How are you different? And I'll share with you one that's not allowed. This is a differentiation that everybody uses, and it's not different. We give better service. Everybody says that. And most of the time, they can't tell you how they give better service. So if that's your differentiation, you need to be able to express what is really different from your competition who says that they give better service also, in ways that's relevant to your customers. So again, take the workbook, look at page 3, and I challenge you to do this for every product line you have and every market segment that you serve, which allows you then to come up with differentiated positioning. And there is a positioning exercise in the workbook as well. And then you get to execution. So understanding the resources you have, the budget that you have, understanding the tactics that it takes to reach your buyers, and most importantly, how do you measure success? Every company I see that's doing some kind of marketing is falling down in how they measure success of their marketing. And if you don't measure your success, then you don't know what's working and what's not, and how to do more of what's working, less of what's not. So the execution tools, there are all kinds. Number one is aligning sales and marketing and understanding what a good lead is, and understanding how you develop good leads, even how you determine what's a good lead and what you do with that when it comes in versus one that's not qualified, and what are good resources and what are not. So then you have to understand how your sales and marketing and sales funnel works. Where do you start? How does a potential customer first become aware of you, get engaged with you? How do you nurture that prospect if they're not ready yet? Get them deeper engaged. At what point do they start a conversation with a salesperson and then get a proposal and turn into closed business? And how has that changed for you during COVID? Again, an exercise for you on page 11 of the workbook, and something that you can gain greater insights in if you read through the Growth Gears. Aligning sales and marketing through a clear sales and marketing funnel. We've talked about these things a little bit. Even understanding how quickly are you responding, because lead response times do matter. A recent study showed that 30 to 50% of sales go to the vendor that responds the first. So if somebody contacts you through your website and you're slow to respond, you can get left in the dust because you can be sure you're not the only one that they're contacting. And so you want to be sure that you're responding quickly. A very quick walk through digital marketing. I just saw this yesterday and I loved it so much I put it in. Who led your digital transformation of your company? The CEO, the CTO, or COVID-19? Well, in most cases today, COVID-19 is driving people toward the digital transformation of their company. Don't resist it. You need to be there. We talked a little while ago about having to be 2 times better, at least 2 times better than you were before, and you should be better than your competition. You need to go further in the buyer's journey with your digital interaction with your clients. We talked about website grader. I would encourage you to look at your website versus your competition. Here's a simple approach to content. People say, how do I get into content marketing? How do I be relevant? Well, think about the biggest 10 objections that your clients have to buying your product or service, or the 10 biggest questions, and start to get input on that and start writing about it. You can even use the HubSpot blog topic generator to help you generate topics to be relevant. You can hire an outside writer. You don't have to do the writing yourself. Go to Fiverr.com or go to Upwork.com and find a relevant writer for you. They're inexpensive and they can get these kinds of things done. Make sure you're analyzing your digital marketing. Make sure you're using Google Analytics. If you don't know how to analyze your digital marketing, we can help you with that. But you should be looking at how many pages are people visiting on your website? How long are they staying? Where are they coming from? How often are they coming back? Those things indicate engagement. Again, you can have the slides here so you can get into the detail of this, but looking at all of these different pieces of your digital marketing and how are you performing versus your competition. McKinsey study talks about the top things that frustrate buyers on your website. How long it takes to order, how difficult it is to find products on your website, how confusing your website is. They expect speed, transparency, expertise, as frictionless an experience as possible. You need to have calls to action. You need to do a digital marketing SWOT. What are your strengths and weaknesses? What are the opportunities and threats specifically having to do with the digital part of your marketing? But let me tell you this, I talk to so many digital marketing agencies and companies that are using them that talk about clicks and talk about impressions and all kinds of things. To me, there's only one thing that matters. How do you convert your digital marketing into revenue? And if you're using a supplier that doesn't understand how the activity turns into revenue and bottom line for you, you're in the wrong place. It has to be about how does it convert to revenue. This is not just about activity. So let me bring this to a point and then we'll have a few minutes for questions. First of all, remember that running and growing are different and you have to align your thinking to the outside in order to grow. You need to start with good insights in order to have good strategy and have high confidence in your strategy. You need to be 2 times better today than you were a year ago at digital marketing, and at least incrementally better than your competition. You've got to have good alignment in sales and marketing, and execution is the last step in this process, but the goal of execution is not activity, it's conversion. And how do you turn this into conversion? So my last thought is marketing without a strategy is like driving with your eyes closed. You wouldn't do that, but most companies are operating their marketing without strategy. Here are a couple of offers for you. First of all, here's my email address. If I can help you in any way, clay@chiefoutsiders.com. I'll send you a copy of the book if you request it. If you'd like a hardcover copy, I'll send it to you for free. I need a physical address to send it to. If you like reading on a Kindle type device, which you can read on your iPad or on your phone or on an actual Kindle, just request it and I'll send you the file and the instruction on how to get it into your device. I have a Growth Gears discussion guide. I'll send you a PDF copy of the slide deck and the workbook, but I think you'll get the workbook if you registered for the webinar. You'll get it from Ty. Show you some links, but you can go to our website and and get more on the Growth Gears at growthgears.com. There's a 15-minute summary in the book resources. And here's a special offer for people listening to this webinar. I will give you a 1-hour consultation with one of our CMOs that's relevant in your industry for free. If you let me know, I need a few minutes with you to understand what your needs are and what industry you're in, what the pain points are, and I'll offer that free hour of consultation. Here's my last thought for you. A year from now, you'll wish you'd started today. So here's my contact information, and we are open for questions. And Aju is going to moderate the questions for us.
That was excellent, Clay. Thank you so much. I think we're already hearing from people that attended that they found a lot of value on this. So we have a couple of questions. I'll start with one that came in very early. On slide 7, why is 6.5% yellow but 3% green for durable goods? I think it's the study that you showed. Any insight on that, Clay?
Well, no, I'm not the economist.
Okay.
I'm only reporting what the economists say. This information comes from their monthly trends report, and I would encourage you to go to itreconomics.com and look at what they have to offer. Like I said, their monthly trends report, I think, is just barely over $1,000 a year. And I would encourage you not to look at your own industry, but the industry of the customers that you serve and what the economic cycles of those industries. And you know, what I showed you was a very high level overview, but they get into individual industry sectors. And so, no, I'm not going to try to explain that. Go ask ITR why they think that 22 is going to be slowing growth.
Sounds good. So Clay, the other question here is, if the offering is a complex sale, unlike a product or the car example that you gave us, can you speak to what is needed for digital marketing for those kind of customers? An example with what you saw with the McKinsey offering. How do you go about selling or providing digital marketing for those kind of services?
Yes, great question, because a lot of us are in the business of complex products and services, and it's a complex sale where there are often multiple decision makers or often influencers. There's one decision maker, but many influencers within a company that can say no and derail a sale, but only one person can say yes. So content marketing has to address all of those. You have to understand the buyer and understand the influencers, and you may have to message to them differently. Let's just say you have a financial buyer. It may be a CFO, or it may be a procurement department, or maybe a CIO if you're in a technology business. But there are other constituencies in that company. There may be engineers, there may be production people, production managers, and others that all have influence in this decision. So you may need to create different kinds of communication for each of those in order for them to have proper influence with the end financial buyer. And I think it's all about understanding the buyer and the buying process and what their needs are and what their different personas are, so that you can have the appropriate messaging in your digital marketing. That's where insights become so important in this. It's not just about executing on digital marketing. It's knowing who your target is and what the messages have to be to get them to make the right decision.
Excellent. So one question is, does Chief Outsiders work with realtors and help them with their marketing? Is that something that you do?
So an individual realtor probably is not, we're not going to be a great fit. But the Growth Gears book, I think, is a tremendous resource to anybody, even an individual consultant or an individual contributor who wants to read through that, because the concepts are the same, even if you apply it individually. a larger company, a real estate company with 20, 30 agents, sure, I think we'd be relevant for that. I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody to discuss and see if we're a relevant resource. If not, I'll tell you that, and I'm happy to point you in the right direction.
Excellent. Thank you. So the other question is, you had the bend concept about the marketing bend and the sales bend. How does that fit into the biz dev, the business development, bend? Is there a specific, fit into those two sides of the same coin is the question.
They are. And here's a little more color on that. In my view, marketing drives the future of the company. Marketing should be thinking about, where's the market going? Where's our customer going? How relevant are we? What products or services do we need to offer and to whom? And developing strategy around that so sales knows who to talk to, what our value proposition is when we talk to customers. What is our value proposition? What's our competition up to? And how do we beat our competition? Sales needs to know those things. So marketing develops the direction. Sales takes that, gets the relevant prospects, and helps influence those prospects to come across the finish line. And sales informs marketing. This is really important. Sales needs to feed back to marketing. Why are we winning and why are we losing in the marketplace? And what are we learning about our customers and what their needs are and how they're changing? What direction are they going? What are we learning about our competition? And what are they trying to do to beat us? We need that competitive intelligence fed back into marketing, which they improve the insights. So the insights improve the strategy, so the strategy improves execution, and the leads that come out of execution are better and more qualified to give to sales. So sales is more successful. It's a, call it a virtuous cycle, call it all part of the same process. They're all gears in a process. We talked about the growth gears, but sales is the fourth gear. And it's a continuous improvement process. It all works together.
Excellent. So there's one question is, how familiar are you with the oil and gas market? I guess from a marketing perspective is the question here. Are you familiar with that marketplace?
That's a great question. I think everybody in Houston knows that's been a very tough sector over the last several years. We've had a number of oil and gas clients. We typically are not relevant to the E&P part of oil and gas, but we've worked with midstream companies. We've worked with oil and gas service companies. We've worked in the downstream area. When selling something to a customer is important and you've got competition that's outselling you and you need to think through how can you be more relevant to your customers, we can help with that. When it's oil and gas coming out of the ground and it's commodity pricing, we're not very good at affecting that cycle. But in the other parts of the industry, we've had a lot of experience and have some people who know that part of the business.
Excellent. I think we're out of questions, Clay. Is there anything else that the attendees have? Any other questions before we wrap up?
We've got a few minutes if the question hasn't been answered.
We've got about 5 minutes if anyone else has any questions. So how do we get the book, Clay? So I think you've already gone over that, but if you want to just repeat that.
I'll repeat it. My email address is very simple, Clay, C-L-A-Y, at ChiefOutsiders, OUTSIDERS.com, Clay at ChiefOutsiders.com. If you'll email me, if you want the Kindle version, all I need is your email. If you want the hardcover version, I need a physical address that I can send it to, and I'll be happy to send it out to you. And along with that, or even if you don't want the book, I'll be happy to send you a PDF copy of the slides, the discussion guide that goes with the book, and other resources that we have available that will help you. If you Before you ask for the book, if you want a 15-minute video summary of the book, go to growthgears.com and go to the third tab, which is the book resources tab, and you'll find a 15-minute summary video of the book. That will be helpful to you.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Clay. I think everyone agrees that this was very informative. I think you brought a lot of great points that as we grow to 2021, a lot of great things that we could go in and implement right away. So thank you again for this very great webinar, and thank you all for attending as well. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Aju. I really appreciate the opportunity to work with you and to speak with the group. And I'm here to help if I can be helpful. And by the way, I know some of your listeners might be global. As Sabia said, some might be sleeping right now. Happy to send the book overseas if you're in a company that's based overseas, and we work with global clients as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Clay. All right, Samia, do you want to just wrap up as part of this? Excellent. I think the only other thing we wanted to kind of highlight is the upcoming webinar, and I'll let Samia kind of show that out as well. So something coming up in February.
We hope you'll join us for our next webinar, Grow Your Business with Houston Community College Programs. That's on February 10th at 4 p.m. Central Time. So we hope you'll be able to, we'll see you then. Thank you, Clay, and thank you, Aju.
Thank you, Samia. Thank you, Clay. Have a good evening, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Take care.